Tonight on Reporting Scotland. The First Minister orders a review of the case of a Scottish Government employee who claims she was bound and gagged by colleagues at work.
I am absolutely horrified at the photograph that has been in the media over the past 24 hours, and I'm also horrified at the circumstances in which that photograph is alleged to have been taken.
Also on the programme. Environmental groups criticise the Scottish Government after it stops short of aiming to have no greenhouse gas emissions by 2050. How heart patients can be monitored remotely thanks to an implant and a special pillow. The new Scottish tennis star who's about to join Andy Murray among the sports elite. And setting sail into the unknown, the Highland rower who's trying to cross the Atlantic solo. Good evening. The First Minister says she is horrified at an image broadcast by the BBC which shows a civil servant with Marine Scotland taped to a chair and gagged. Deanne Fitzpatrick claims she was attacked by colleagues after she'd spoken out against an alleged culture of misogyny at a Scottish Government office in Scrabster. Nicola Sturgeon told the Scottish Parliament she'd ordered a full review into the circumstances of the case. Our investigations correspondent Mark Daly reports.
Yesterday, we revealed this picture of a civil servant gagged and strapped to a chair, allegedly for speaking out against a misogynist culture within Marine Scotland. Deanne Fitzpatrick claims this was the worst example of a decade of harassment within the Scrabster office of the Scottish Government agency, but her complaints, she says, fell on deaf ears. Well, today, in the Scottish Parliament, that all changed.
I am absolutely horrified at the photograph that has been in the media over the past 24 hours, and I'm also horrified at the circumstances in which that photograph is alleged to have been taken. Bullying, abuse, sexism, racism have no place in any workplace, and let me be very clear today, they will not be tolerated within the Scottish Government or within our agencies.
And the First Minister announced she'd ordered the government's leading civil servant to conduct a full review into Deanne Fitzpatrick's case and report back to her personally. Government ministers have been aware of this case for years, according to Ms Fitzpatrick's MSP, and the BBC has been asking questions about it for weeks.
Took one picture to get some action. If people were aware of her whole story, this would not be swept under the carpet again. This would have to be dealt with. And the amount of emails I'm getting today from people who are in similar situations, who are actually coming to me because this has happened to them, we need to stop this. This can't happen in a modern Scotland anymore.
Signed off sick but still a government employee, Deanne Fitzpatrick is prevented from speaking publicly, and the Scottish Government has so far resisted calls to let her speak. Her family, though, welcomed the First Minister's statement.
I'm pleased to see that somebody is going to take some action. Still a bit hesitant because of, what's been going on and over the last 10 years, but I hope that the First Minister stays true to her word that she is going to find a resolution personally to this matter.
Already there are signs of movement. A disciplinary hearing against Ms Fitzpatrick, which she believed had been designed to get rid of her, has now been postponed. It now seems her future here will be effectively decided by the First Minister of Scotland. Mark Daly, Reporting Scotland.
There have been harsh exchanges at Holyrood over plans by the SNP to restart the debate about independence. The party's Growth Commission is due to publish its final report tomorrow, featuring claims that an independent Scotland could thrive by matching the growth rates of similar small countries. Opposition leaders said the First Minister should focus on sorting out existing problems in schools and hospitals. From Holyrood, here's our political editor, Brian Taylor.
Borgen, the First Minister's favourite drama about Denmark's determined female leader. The SNP Growth Commission reckons Scotland can match this. No, not the political intrigue, the Danish economy. The report, out in full tomorrow, will argue that with a focus on skills, innovation and exports, Scotland could grow the economy in line with small developed nations like Denmark, Finland and New Zealand. For the Scottish people, it's claimed that could be worth £4,100 a head. Nicola Sturgeon says the report can stimulate a new debate about Scotland's prospects now and under independence. But the Conservative leader says enough. Get back to the day job.
Tomorrow, the First Minister is going to launch yet another blueprint into independence, dragging this country back to the debates of the past. She has repeatedly claimed that education is her #1 priority, and so it should be. But the facts show difference. With her, it is independence first and everything else a long way behind. And the country is asking, why won't she give it a rest?
Labour's Richard Leonard agreed, although his priority was the NHS.
The long-delayed SNP Growth Commission report is published tomorrow. That might excite the backbenches of the SNP, but it will exasperate the millions of people right across Scotland who just want the First Minister focused on public services like our National Health Service.
The First Minister insisted she would focus on education and the health service, but it was entirely right to revisit the option of independence.
Small independent countries across the world consistently do better than the UK and than Scotland within the UK. So the positive debate that we look forward to leading is how Scotland raises its game even further, matches the best in the world for the benefit of people right across our country. We will do that with our current powers, and we will look to equip this Parliament so that it is even stronger to deliver on the part of the people we represent.
The political arguments will continue tomorrow and into the future. But, as Borgen reminds us, the choice lies with the people.
Og derfor vil jeg nu lade det være op til den danske befolkning.
Nicola Sturgeon also wants to let Scotland decide, but maybe not just yet.
And Brian Taylor joins me now from outside the Scottish Parliament building. Brian, what can we expect from tomorrow?
The calculation among the SNP, among the Yes camp more generally, among observers, is that the independence referendum was lost by the Yes side in 2014 because sufficient doubt was sown about economic prospects. They want to address that. That's what the Growth Commission has been all about. So I expect the report to be peppered with words like certainty and stability. One thing I do not expect to be in the report, contrary to some suggestions, is an immediate move to a distinctive separate Scottish currency. Rather, I think, as I said on the wireless this morning, that will be nuanced, and it'll be keeping sterling would be the objective in the medium term. Now, this says nothing to stress, despite all the arguments today. This says nothing about the timing of a referendum itself. This is about trying to answer the problems that occurred for the Yes side in 2014. If you like, they are preparing for that referendum, but will take a decision later. Prepare and decide.
Brian, thank you. A bus driver has been convicted of causing the death of a Rangers fan by dangerous driving. 49-year-old Callum Phillips from Dalbeattie had denied killing Ryan Baird by causing an accident near Kilmarnock in October 2016. Mr Baird, who was 39 and from Sanquhar in Dumfries and Galloway, died at the scene from his injuries. He'd been travelling to Glasgow with the Nith Valley Rangers Supporters Club to watch his team play Partick Thistle. Police say a 12-year-old boy missing from residential accommodation in Ayrshire has been traced in Manchester. Leon Williamson was last seen on Tuesday morning boarding a Glasgow-bound train at Glengarnock railway station. His friend, 14-year-old Olivia Bryson, hasn't yet been found. Police have arrested a man in connection with the death of a young woman in Perthshire. The body of Annalise Johnston was found close to a road near the village of Dunning. Officers are treating the case as murder. Andrew Anderson reports.
Annalise Johnston's body was found in woods close to the side of this road near the village of Dunning, south of Perth. That was 2 weeks ago. 4 days later, detectives confirmed that they were treating the 22-year-old's death as suspicious. Annalise was from Ardrossan in Ayrshire. She had left her home the day before she was found dead to visit family in Perthshire. There's been intense police activity where her body was discovered and at another 10 locations. Police were continuing to search fields outside Dunning today. This monument has also been cordoned off. Properties in nearby Auchter Arder have also been visited by officers. A car in which it's believed Annalise was travelling was removed by police from this house in the village of Inchtour between Dundee and Perth. Detectives have arrested a 24-year-old man in connection with the death of Annalise Johnson. They say they're now treating this as a murder inquiry. Specialist officers are supporting her family.
Almost 4 years after it began, the Edinburgh Trams inquiry has held its final public hearing. To date, £9 million has been spent on the investigation, which was set up to examine why the Trams project was delivered 5 years late and at double the original cost. Well, Stephen Godden has been following its progress and joins us now from the capital. Stephen, how significant a moment is this?
Well, Sally, this inquiry was announced almost as soon as the trams finally arrived on the streets of Edinburgh. We were told it would be swift and thorough. Lord Hardy, who was put in charge, was tasked with finding out why it had gone wrong, why it was delivered 5 years late at a cost of three quarters of a billion pounds. Now, today, almost exactly 4 years on from that, he heard the final submissions before going off to reach his conclusions. Now, in truth, those submissions were fairly dry. The process has been fairly dry, detailed and complex. But in summary, we heard from the council, who pointed the finger at project lawyers DLA Piper. They said that on key aspects of the contract, they'd been given advice that was incomplete and inaccurate, and as a result, that had led to disputes with the contractors, those delays and cost overruns. DLA Piper, for their part, they completely refuted that. They said that they had explained the risks, and that if council lawyers had failed to understand that this wasn't a fixed price contract, then the fault lay with them. Well, all of that and an awful lot more besides is now for Lord Hardy to determine.
So what happens next?
Well, he's looking at past failings, but this also has implications for the future. As we speak, the council are considering a business case for extending the line from here in the city centre through Leith to Newhaven. Now, at the inquiry today, we were told that the council view this as an opportunity to show that they've learned past lessons. Councillors will make a decision on this later in the year. What they don't have, of course, at the moment are Lord Hardy's conclusions. He wouldn't be drawn on a timetable for that, though, simply saying today that he would deliver his report in due course.
Stephen, thank you for that. The Scottish Government has stopped short of aiming to make the country carbon neutral by 2050. There's been pressure to set the ambitious target as a show of global leadership in addressing climate change. Instead, it will go for a 90% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions, a target which has disappointed many groups. Our environment correspondent Kevin Keane reports.
Almost everything we do has an impact on the environment, from driving a car to heating our homes. Each of these and other actions are calculated by their greenhouse gas emissions. The aim is to reduce the total figure and halt the impact of climate change. That doesn't mean entirely eradicating everything we do. Increased forestry, for example, would soak up some of those harmful gases. It's about getting the mix right. Today, the Environment Secretary insisted Scotland will become net carbon neutral, but there's no word on when.
This is because the UK Committee on Climate Change, which is where we get our scientific advice from, says that 90% is at the limit of feasibility. Net zero is at the moment, doesn't have a pathway that they can see clearly how to get there.
Change is necessary even to meet the new 90% target set out in the bill. Electric cars would have to become the norm. And that would mean more electricity needed to power them. Most of that would have to come from increased renewables. But it's still not ambitious enough for campaigners.
When the 2009 Climate Change Act was passed, people thought that looking to reduce emissions by 42% by 2020 was unrealistic, but the government rightly said that there was going to be innovation, that we had to set an aspirational target to get things done and to bring in the innovations we needed, and that the same should apply in 2050.
2050 is as far into the future as 1986 is into the past. Not a lifetime, but a generation away. So will we be living a vastly different life in a future low-carbon world?
Many of the things that we might expect to see will be very familiar to us, but there'll be just much more efficient homes and businesses. There'll be local energy generation, there'll be clean air in cities, there'll be electric vehicles on the streets. So many of the things that we would anticipate are solvable with technology.
Today's bill is more ambitious than the one it'll replace, but the Scottish Greens still say the aims are timid. Kevin Keane reporting Scotland. You're watching BBC Reporting Scotland. It's coming up to 7:15.
A reminder of tonight's top story. The First Minister orders a review of the case of a Scottish Government employee who claims she was bound and gagged by colleagues at work. And still to come, the new Scottish tennis star who's about to join Andy Murray among the sports elite. For the first time in Scotland, heart patients have been fitted with a new device which monitors their condition from home. The implant means they can avoid regular invasive hospital procedures, and doctors can keep track of their results on a daily basis, making faster decisions about the medications they should be taking. Lucy White reports.
Starting reading. For 18 seconds every day, Charmaine Bishop lies down on this special pillow. It connects to a miniature device inside one of her arteries and measures the pressures inside her heart and lungs. While that's happening, her information is being sent here to doctors at the Golden Jubilee Hospital in Clydebank. They'll read the results and check everything is as it should be. Charmaine was first diagnosed with heart failure at the beginning of last year, and this February she became the first person in Scotland to be fitted with a device called CardioMEMS, which means her condition is monitored all of the time.
The difference it does make is you feel you're being monitored constantly, so it makes you feel a lot better, not obviously physically, but it just means you know if something's wrong, they'll know about it right away.
At the moment, if you have heart failure, you could find yourself coming to somewhere like this several times a year to have this catheter inserted into your heart and lungs. But what the doctors are hoping to prove through this trial is that you could have this tiny device inserted instead and get the same results daily from home.
What if there was a tool that would alert your doctor that your heart failure may be getting worse even before you felt symptoms?
It was first trialled in the US, and they found a 30% decrease in the number of times patients with heart failure had to be brought into hospital. The device is now being tested across the UK, including on 3 people so far in Scotland.
And what we're trying to establish from a UK perspective is whether this is cost effective, because this tiny little microchip, which is full of so much promise, costs about £12,000 each. So an expensive upfront cost, but hopefully will keep people out of hospital.
The trial is expected to run for around 2 years, and then it will be up to medical organisations to recommend whether or not the NHS should pay for it and start using the devices. Lucy White, reporting Scotland.
The former First Lady Michelle Obama is to speak about her time in the White House at a special fundraising dinner in Edinburgh. Mrs. Obama will follow in the footsteps of her husband when she addresses a charity dinner organised by the Hunter Foundation in July. About 1,200 people attended when President Obama spoke at the same event last year. All profits will be invested in charities across Scotland. Fishing crews are being asked to conduct regular and realistic drills for major flooding following the sinking of a trawler off Shetland last year. A marine accident report into the loss of the Ocean Way found the crew were not prepared for the scale of flooding they faced. The 5 men on board were forced to jump into the sea before they were rescued. From Shetland, John Johnson reports.
The final moments of the Ocean Way. The crew jump for their lives.
The speed at which it did happen, then it did cause a suction effect. Me and the skipper, we were at the head of the boat and trying to swim away from it as fast as we can and still getting drawn in. It was like the boat was chasing us.
In less than a minute, their 60-foot boat sinks below the waves.
With it going down as quick as it did, we had no choice but to jump in the water.
The boat started taking in water after its trawl door struck the hull and holed it. For over an hour, the crew battled to try and save their vessel, taking 2 pumps on board in an attempt to stem the surge of water. But it wasn't to be. The Lerwick lifeboat and Coast Guard helicopter were quickly at the scene. One by one, the crew were fished out of the water. Investigators found the vessel didn't have bilge pumps in each of the watertight compartments to help prevent the flooding. 14 months on, a marine accident report into the incident is recommending changes.
Well, it was a very serious flooding incident, and our appeal to fishermen is to make sure that they take time to do regular and realistic drills so they're properly prepared for this sort of emergency.
It was a lucky escape for the crew. All but one of the men are back fishing and hope to order a new boat very soon. John Johnston, reporting Scotland, Shetland.
Scotland will have another tennis player in the top 100 next week, with Cameron Norrie breaking through to join Andy Murray amongst the elite of the sport. The 22-year-old, whose father's from Glasgow, has just reached his first ATP Tour semi-final after securing his first win over a top 10 player. Cardine Idsan has more.
He has the Andy Murray roar. And on this evidence, some of Murray's game too. Cameron Norrie had never beaten a top 10 player. His first such conquest, America's John Isner. The Scot used to idolise his big serving opponent. Now he was a set away from beating him. Shots like this at the Lyon Open, giving the 22-year-old his first ever semi-final on the World Tennis Tour. Indeed, it's been quite a year. Last July, he wasn't even among the planet's top 250 players. But in the past 10 months, he's climbed nearly 200 places and will break into the top 100 for the first time on Monday, with a world ranking of 85 at worst.
The thing about tennis is you always want more. So now I'm just going to want top 50, top 20, top 10. So, I mean, yeah, I need to enjoy that. And it's a very, very great achievement for myself and something to be proud of.
His other main claim to fame, a stunning win in his Davis Cup debut for Britain in Spain.
Has there ever been a better debut win in Davis Cup than that? I don't think so.
Born in South Africa and raised in New Zealand, he then played college tennis in America. But with a proud Glaswegian father, Cameron Norrie's happy to be claimed by Scotland and adamant he can rise much further in the game yet. Cardine Idsan, reporting Scotland.
A Lochinver man is ready to embark on the challenge of a lifetime later this week as he attempts to cross the Atlantic Ocean in a boat he built himself. Amateur rower Duncan Hutchison will set off from New York, aiming to row back to his hometown in the Northwest Highlands. Ian McInnes has been to meet him.
He'll call it home for the next few months. Duncan's hand-built boat is ready for sea, in many ways representing his own spirit of adventure. Born and brought up in the Sutherland fishing port of Lochinver, Duncan has spent his life on the seas. But this latest challenge is sure to push him to the limit.
I think it's just to prove to people that nearly normal people can do things themselves, build a boat and hopefully row it. That was the whole idea, to prove that normal people can do unusual things, you know.
And it's been a labour of love, 3 years in the making, from start to finish, each part of the process completed by Duncan's fair hand. And the crowning glory?
This is Sleipnir. It's a Norwegian mythology horse. This is the name here, Sleipnir. And there's an 8-legged horse that was deemed to fly and go across the sea, glide across the sea.
And is that going to give you some inspiration, do you think, on the route?
I hope so.
And he might need it. He's due to leave New York in the coming week. But what of his wife's thoughts on his upcoming challenge?
She seems really supportive, and at first I don't think anyone believed me, but maybe they still don't, but I'm doing it anyway.
And what about the family themselves? You've got kids yourself. Are they quite supportive? Are they?
Yeah, they're great, yeah.
Do you think you're mad?
Yes, well, I was mad before, so this proves it, yeah.
Mad or not, what lies ahead is certainly a challenge. Up until a few years ago, more folk had walked the moon than rode solo across the Atlantic.
Normally won't be as footery as this.
Duncan, though, is aware of the struggle which lies ahead.
Probably the loneliness, I think. I'm not sure. I say I like fishing as solitude and quiet and everything. It's like fishing without the fishing. But I think the physical side will be obviously difficult, but I think the solitude,
Duncan expects to take between 90 and 100 days to complete the crossing, but he hopes to be back here in Lochinver on Highland Games Day in mid-August. There's sure to be many a challenge before then, though, as he continues his expedition. Ian McInnes, reporting Scotland in Lochinver.
Timeline is on over on BBC Two in just over half an hour's time. Shireen and Glenn can tell us what's coming up.
Tonight, should anti-abortion campaigners be allowed to hold pro-life vigils outside hospitals?
The Scots documentary maker on his latest film on endangered elephants, with a stark warning about their future.
And Karen Dunbar will be here to chat about her new role in Calendar Girls and her TEDx talk on how comedy can be a force for good.
Timeline 7:30, BBC Two Scotland.
Well, it's been another beautiful sunny day. Let's hear about the weather prospects for the weekend from Judith. Holiday weekend for many. Is sunshine too much to hope for?
No, we've backed it this time, Sally. I bring good news, thank you very much. You can see blue skies behind me. Pictures from our weather watchers sent in earlier on. This little chap here enjoying the sunshine as well. It has been a beautiful day, and this picture sent in from Aaron almost makes you feel like you're in the Caribbean. But not everywhere saw the sunshine. Along the east coast we held on some har, and that har made it feel rather cool, if not cold. 9 degrees for Inverbervie under that cloud, but in the west 23 for Prestwick and parts of the Northwest Highlands as well. Some sunshine to end the day on, but that har returning to eastern Scotland as we head through the overnight period. More cloud pushing into the far north and Northern Isles, and some greyness pushing through the central lowlands as well. Lows tonight of around 5 to 6 Celsius. So tomorrow starts off dry with good sunny spells for much of the country. However, we still have that grey har running through the central lowlands and across the east. However, it does burn off. A bit cloudier in the north as well, but that cloud should thin and break as we head in towards the afternoon period. So come the afternoon, I think we'll hold on to fairly cloudy skies for Orkney and Shetland. Something brighter eventually coming through. Quite cloudy too for Caithness, that har rolling in here, and that har sinking into northern parts of Aberdeenshire as well. But I do think for the east coast tomorrow we should see some more sunshine as that greyness retreats into the North Sea, but still cool with that onshore breeze. Inland though 19-20 Celsius, good sunny spells across the west, 22, 23, maybe even a wee 24 for parts of western Scotland, and we lose the cloud eventually from the Western Isles and the far north as well. So all in all, a pretty good day considering it's Scotland. We'll see clouds starting to push into the far south, possibly 1 or 2 showers tomorrow evening here, but that's where dry, and we'll see some evening sunshine foremost as well. Here's our lovely big area of high pressure still with us, still hanging around well through the weekend as well. So Saturday, another dry, fine day with good sunny spells as well. And those temperatures, once again, on the warm side, we're looking at 22, 23 Celsius. Again, just that wee bit cooler along the east coast, and Sunday's looking very similar as well, as indeed is Monday. That's your forecast, Sally.
What a forecast. Thank you, Judith. Now, a reminder of tonight's main news. The First Minister has ordered a review of the case of a Scottish Government employee who claims she was bound and gagged by colleagues at work. And that's Reporting Scotland for now. I'll be back with the late bulletin just after the 10 o'clock news. Until then, from all of us here, have a very good evening.